I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, sitting in my car outside our house, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My mind was racing, replaying every moment from the past few months, trying to connect the dots. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Lucy for 6 years. We were never the perfect couple, but we had a rhythm, a routine that felt comfortable. At least, that's what I thought. It all started with little things. Lucy became distant, often glued to her phone, giggling at texts that she quickly hid when I walked into the room. I brushed it off as her being busy with work or chatting with friends. But then, there were the late nights. I'd wake up to find her not beside me, and when I'd ask where she was, she'd say she was at the gym or hanging out with her coworkers. I started to feel like I was living with a stranger. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise her by making dinner. I had her favorite chicken Alfredo simmering on the stove. She was supposed to be home by 6, but when the clock struck 7 and then 8 with no sign of her, my stomach twisted in knots. I tried calling, but she didn't answer. I was packing the living room, feeling more anxious by the minute. Finally, I got a text. Running late, work, been crazy. Love you 3. I don't know what came over me, but something felt off and I couldn't shake it off. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door. I drove to her office, hoping to find her still working late. Instead, I found the parking lot mostly empty. Panic set in and I dialed her phone again. This time it went straight to voicemail. I thought about driving back home when I saw a bright light flickering down by the community pool we lived near. What if she had gone there? The pool was closed for the night, but it was still light enough to see the silhouettes of a few people. That's when I saw him. A lifeguard, young and fit, chatting with Lucy, who was laughing a little too hard at his jokes. My heart sank into my stomach. I stood there hidden behind a tree, watching the scene unfold. Her body language was all wrong. She was leaning in, her touches lingering too long on his arm. I felt anger surge through me, a hot, burning rage that I couldn't contain. My instincts kicked in and I took a few steps forward, my heart pounding in my chest. Just as I was about to confront them, I heard her say, "You're such a great guy, Kevin. It's nice to find someone who gets me." Those words pierced through me like a knife. I felt as if my world was crashing down. Betrayal washed over me like a tidal wave. In that moment, I thought of all the times I had stood by her, supported her through the ups and downs. I had always been her biggest cheerleader, and here she was, flaunting herself in front of someone else. I turned away, feeling sick. I didn't want to confront her like that, not in that moment. I decided I needed to gather my thoughts before I faced the music. I drove home, my mind racing with what I had just witnessed. When she finally came home, I pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I waited until she was in the shower, and then I confronted the evidence I had seen. I felt like a detective, piecing together the clues of her betrayal. I should have felt empowered, but instead I felt broken. When she came out, I asked her about her night, and she launched into a story about how work was hectic and she had lost track of time. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but she had that familiar knack for dodging the truth. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I held back. I needed to plan my next move. As I lay in bed that night, I felt numb. I thought about all the years we had spent together, the dreams we had shared, and now they felt like ashes. I was left with a choice that would change everything. I could confront her, putting our marriage on the line, or I could plot my revenge. I opted for the latter. This wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about rediscovering myself. To be continued. The following weeks were a blur of anger and sorrow. I could no longer pretend everything was fine. I went through the motions of our daily life, but inside I was a volcano ready to erupt. Lucy seemed oblivious to my internal turmoil. She continued with her usual routine, but I was watching her. Every time she picked up her phone, I felt a surge of rage. Every time she laughed, I felt the sting of betrayal. I remember one evening when I overheard her on the phone, laughing and chatting with someone. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell by her tone that it was far more than just a friendly conversation. My heart raced and a wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed a plan, a way to channel my anger and betrayal into something constructive. I decided it was time for a transformation. not just for revenge, but for myself. I wanted to reclaim my life, and the first step was getting in shape. I joined a gym, something I had always put off because of my busy schedule. I threw myself into it with a vengeance. I was at the gym every day, pushing my body to its limits. I started running, lifting weights, and swimming. I felt like a new man, shedding not only the weight but also the emotional baggage Lucy had left behind. I transformed physically, but I also started to change mentally. I began to focus on my own interests, things I had pushed aside for our marriage. I took up swimming, something I loved but had not done in years. I found solace in the water, a place where I could escape the turmoil in my life. The more I improved, the more confidence I gained. It became clear to me that I was no longer the man who would simply sit back and accept betrayal. I wanted revenge, but it was more than that. I wanted to show Lucy what she was missing. One day at the gym, I bumped into an old friend, Mike. He was a personal trainer and he noticed the change in me. We caught up, and I shared my predicament about Lucy. He encouraged me to keep focusing on myself, and he even offered to help me with my fitness goals. With his guidance, I started to build a body I was proud of, and every inch of muscle I gained felt like a small victory against Lucy's betrayal. As I became more involved in the fitness community, I met new people. One woman in particular caught my eye, Sarah. She was vibrant, full of life, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but there was a spark between us. We started to hang out more, and I found myself laughing again, feeling a sense of normalcy return to my life. This was new territory for me, learning to enjoy life without the shadow of my marriage looming over me. Meanwhile, Lucy remained oblivious to my transformation. I could see that she was starting to worry. She noticed the changes in my appearance and my newfound confidence. I could see the questions in her eyes when she looked at me. I was no longer the passive husband she had taken for granted. I remember one night at dinner, she tried to engage me in conversation about our day, but I was curt, giving her short answers. I wanted her to feel the distance I was creating. I wanted her to realize that I was moving on, even if she did know it yet. The look on her face was a mixture of confusion and concern, and it felt good to see her squirm a little. At that point, I knew I was ready to confront her. I had changed so much that I could no longer ignore the elephant in the room. I wanted her to know I was no longer the man she could manipulate. I wanted closure or, at the very least, to see the shock on her face when I finally revealed my plans. The day came when I finally sat her down. I could see that she was nervous, perhaps sensing that something was off. I took a deep breath, ready to lay it all out. But before I could reveal my knowledge of her affair, I realized I needed to play my cards right. It was time to show her exactly how far I had come, and how much I was willing to fight for my own happiness. To be continued. The day I decided to confront Lucy felt like the calm before a storm. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say 1,000 times, but the moment always felt surreal. I invited her to sit down in our living room, an area that had once felt cozy but now felt stifling and full of memories I wanted to forget. The air was thick with tension, and I could see that Lucy sensed something was off. "Jake, what's going on?" she asked, her brow furrowing in concern. There was that familiar tone, the one she used when she knew she had done something wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Lucy," I started, my voice steady but low. "We need to talk about us. About what's been happening." For a moment she looked confused, and then a hint of defensiveness crept into her expression. "What do you mean? I don't understand." I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from spilling everything at once. I didn't want to give her the chance to divert the conversation, to twist things around as she often did. "I know about the lifeguard," I said bluntly, watching her eyes widen in shock. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her composure cracking. "You can't just accuse me of..." "Accuse?" I interrupted, my voice rising slightly. "Lucy, I saw you. I saw you with him at the pool. Don't pretend like this isn't happening." Her face paled, and I could see her mind racing, desperately searching for the right words. "Jake, it's not what you think. It was just a conversation, I swear." Her voice was pleading, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She was scrambling, trying to find an escape from the truth. I leaned forward, trying to maintain my composure. Do you think I'm that naive? You've been distant, and now I know why. So just be honest with me for once. For a brief moment, silence hung heavy between us. I could feel the weight of the moment settle in. Finally, she opened her mouth, her tone shifting from defensive to desperate. Okay, fine, we talked, we flirted a bit, but it didn't mean anything. It was just fun, Jake. You don't understand how lonely I've felt. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on her betrayal that I hadn't considered her feelings. Lonely. You were the one who chose to shut me out. You were the one who chose to seek attention from someone else instead of communicating with me. Her voice cracked as she tried to argue back. I didn't think you would care. You've been so wrapped up in your own world, you didn't even notice me. That was it. That was the moment I realized how far we had drifted apart. Wrapped up in my own world, I shook my head in disbelief. I've been here, Lucy. I was just trying to support you, but you didn't give me the chance to be there for you. You made this choice. You decided to cheat. The tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but then I pushed it aside. I was not here for her tears, I was here to reclaim my dignity. You need to understand something, I said, my voice firm. I'm not the same man I was a few months ago. I've been working on myself physically and mentally. I refuse to be the guy you walk all over anymore. She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand to stop her. I wanna divorce, Lucy. I can't keep living this lie. It's time for both of us to move on. The shock on her face was palpable. Jake, no, we can work on this. I'll change, I promise. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. I had made up my mind, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate me again. I need to think about my own happiness for once, I replied, my voice steady. I deserve better than this, and so do you. I can't change the past, but I can control my future, and I'm walking away from this. With that, I stood up, the weight of my decision settling in. I felt a mix of relief and sadness as I watched her crumble in the chair, the reality of our situation finally setting in. I walked out of the room, feeling a sense of liberation that I hadn't felt in months. I had taken control of my life, and it felt good. As I stepped out of the house, I took a deep breath. The air outside felt fresh, and in that moment I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to swim away from this chapter of my life and embrace what lay ahead, to be continued. It took a few days for Lucy to process what had happened. I moved out of the house and into a small apartment a few blocks away. I needed space to breathe and think without the constant reminders of my failed marriage. The apartment was modest, nothing fancy, but it felt like my own little sanctuary. I surrounded myself with things that made me happy, and slowly I began to rediscover who I was outside of Lucy. During those early days, I threw myself into my workouts, pushing my physical limits to feel stronger, more resilient. I became a regular at the pool where I had once shared leisurely afternoons with Lucy. Now it was a place of healing, each stroke through the water helping me wash away the pain of betrayal. One evening, while I was at the gym, I ran into Sarah again. We chatted more openly this time, sharing stories and laughter. She exuded energy and warmth, a stark contrast to the coldness I felt in my previous relationship. I was drawn to her, and for the first time since the breakup, I felt a flicker of attraction. "Hey, do you want to grab a smoothie after this?" she asked, flashing a bright smile. It took me by surprise, but before I could overthink it, I agreed. We ended up talking for hours, and what started as a casual hangout turned into a connection that felt genuine. For the first time in a while, I felt seen and appreciated for who I was, not just as Lucy's husband. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into my new routine. I trained harder at the gym, swam longer at the pool, and explored the city with Sarah. She was adventurous, always suggesting new places to explore, and I loved how effortlessly our conversations flowed. It was refreshing to meet someone who didn't have a history of lies weighing down our interactions. Meanwhile, Lucy was still trying to reach out. She would send me texts, sometimes apologizing, other times trying to convince me to give our marriage another chance. I ignored most of them, focusing on the new life I was building. I had learned that I didn't owe Lucy anything. The betrayal had shattered the trust we built over the years, and I realized I was no longer the person who would allow myself to be manipulated. One afternoon, I received a call from a mutual friend, Mark. "Hey, Jake, I just wanted to check in on you. You okay?" "Yeah, I'm doing well," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Look, Jake, Lucy has been pretty upset. She's been saying that she misses you and wants to fix things. I just thought maybe you should talk to her." I felt a surge of anger at the thought of someone trying to guilt me into reconciling. "Mark, I appreciate the concern, but I don't want to talk to her. I've moved on. I can't go back to that." "Okay, I understand. Just remember people make mistakes," he said softly. "Yeah, and some mistakes cost too much," I replied sharply before hanging up. I could feel the weight of my past trying to pull me back into a reality I had fought so hard to escape from. As the weeks went by, I started to find a rhythm in my new life. I was going on dates with Sarah, enjoying the thrill of getting to know someone without the baggage of my previous relationship. I felt lighter, freer, and more alive than I had in years. But there was still a part of me that felt the ache of betrayal, the scars left behind by Lucy. Then came a fateful night when Sarah and I decided to go to a local festival. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and as we laughed and danced, I felt a sense of normalcy returning. That was until I spotted Lucy across the crowd, her eyes locking onto mine with a mixture of anger and desperation. My heart raced and I turned to Sarah, who was oblivious to the tension unfolding behind me. I wanted to hide, to disappear into the crowd, but I couldn't. Lucy approached us, her demeanor a mix of rage and sorrow. "Jake," she called out, her voice cutting through the music. "What are you doing here, with her?" The moment felt surreal as the tension between us crackled in the air. I took a breath, willing myself to remain calm. "Lucy, this isn't a conversation we need to have here," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Why not? You think you can just move on without any consequences? You think you can just replace me?" She shot back, her voice rising. "Replace you? No, Lucy, I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm trying to reclaim my life," I replied, my heart pounding. "You made your choice. I'm just living with mine." Sarah, sensing the tension, looked between us, unsure of what to do. "Maybe we should go," she suggested gently, but I shook my head. "No, I need to say this. You need to hear it." I turned back to Lucy, my voice steady. "You had your chance and you threw it away. I deserve better and I'm not looking back." Tears welled in her eyes as she opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "No more excuses, Lucy. You chose to cheat. You chose to hurt me, and now it's my turn to choose happiness. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I've moved on." With that, I turned to Sarah and took her hand, leading her away from the confrontation. I could hear Lucy's voice calling after me, but I didn't look back. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of power washing over me. I had confronted my past and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future, to be continued. As Sarah and I walked away from Lucy, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: relief, anger, and even a hint of guilt. But I quickly brushed those feelings aside. I had made my choice, and it was time to focus on the path ahead. Sarah squeezed my hand, silently offering her support as we navigated through the festival crowd. "Do you want to talk about what just happened?" she asked gently, her eyes searching mine for answers. I shook my head. "Not right now. I just need to process it all." "Okay," she said, her voice soft but understanding. We moved on and I tried to immerse myself in the festivities, but my mind kept drifting back to Lucy's panicked expression and the vulnerability I had seen in her eyes. That night was a turning point for me. It was the first time I had truly stood up for myself in the wake of the betrayal. I had taken back my power. I left the festival feeling lighter, but there was still a weight of unresolved emotions I needed to tackle. In the days that followed, I focused on finding closure. I realized I needed to confront my feelings about the entire situation, not just the anger and betrayal. I started journaling, pouring my heart out onto the pages. It served as a cathartic release, a way to process the hurt and reclaim my narrative. I wrote about my memories with Lucy, the good and the bad, and by the end of it, I felt a sense of liberation. I also continued to grow closer to Sarah. We spent more time together, and I found comfort in her laughter and the way she listened when I spoke. She was supportive but never pushy, allowing me the space to share as much or as little as I wanted about my past. In her presence, I began to envision a future that was bright and exciting, something I thought was long gone after my marriage. After a few weeks, I decided it was time to confront Lucy one last time. I needed to make sure she understood that there was no way back for us. I reached out to her, asking to meet in a neutral space, a coffee shop downtown. When we sat down, the atmosphere was thick with tension. I could see that she had been crying, her eyes red and swollen. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly reminded myself of why I was there. "Lucy, I want to be clear about something," I said, my voice steady. "There's no going back for us. I'm moving on. I hope you can, too." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know I messed up, Jake. I really do. I didn't appreciate what I had until it was gone. It took seeing you with someone else to realize how much I truly lost. I'm sorry." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't ignore the hurt she had caused me. "You know, it's not just about the cheating, Lucy. It's about the lies and the distance. You shut me out when I needed you to open up. I can't live with that." "I know," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I took you for granted. I thought that you would always be there, and I was careless. I never meant to hurt you." At that moment, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, not just for us, but for the dream we had built together. "I need to focus on my own happiness now. I hope you find your way, too," I replied. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything hanging heavily between us. Then I stood up, ready to leave the past behind once and for all. "Goodbye, Lucy," I said softly and walked away, feeling like I was shedding a final layer of grief. The following weeks were filled with a renewed sense of freedom. I continued to develop my relationship with Sarah, and every moment felt like a step toward a brighter future. We spent weekends exploring new hiking trails, trying out new restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company without the burden of past relationships hanging over our heads. Eventually, I found a newfound passion for swimming competitions. I had joined a local swim team, and my confidence skyrocketed as I improved my skills. I enjoyed the camaraderie with my teammates, pushing each other to do better. I even signed up for my first competition, driven by the desire to challenge myself and prove that I was capable of achieving greatness despite my past. As I prepared for the competition, I found myself reflecting on everything I had gone through. I remembered the pain of betrayal, but also the strength I had discovered within myself. I felt proud of the journey I had undertaken, the transformation I had experienced, both physically and emotionally. When the day of the competition arrived, I was nervous but excited. I stood poolside, taking in the atmosphere, the cheers of supporters, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I dove into the water, I felt exhilarated, each stroke propelling me forward, leaving behind any remnants of my past. I finished the race stronger than I had anticipated, and as I emerged from the water, I couldn't help but smile. I had done it. I had taken control of my life, turned my pain into strength, and emerged victorious. As I accepted my medal, I realized I was no longer just a guy recovering from heartbreak. I was now someone who had learned to thrive despite adversity. I had learned to love myself again and to embrace the future with an open heart. To be continued. After the competition, life continued to blossom in ways I never anticipated. I felt a renewed sense of purpose as I navigated this new chapter. My relationship with Sarah deepened, and I began to open up more about my past. I realized that sharing my experiences didn't just allow her to understand me better, it also helped me process the hurt in a healthy way. One evening, as we sat on my balcony, I turned to her, feeling a surge of courage. "You know, I never thought I could feel this way again after everything that happened with Lucy," I confessed. "But being with you has shown me that love can be different. It can be supportive and uplifting." Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling in the warm glow of the sunset. "You deserve happiness, Jake. You've been through so much, and I'm grateful that you're letting me be part of your life." Her words resonated deeply within me. I realized that I had finally let go of the pain from my marriage. I no longer felt like I was carrying a heavy weight on my shoulders. I was ready to move toward the future, one filled with possibilities instead of past regrets. As the months went by, I immersed myself further in the swimming community, participating in more competitions and even mentoring younger swimmers. I found joy in encouraging others, sharing my journey with them, and showing them that obstacles could be overcome. Each success I experienced felt like a victory not just for me, but for anyone who had ever faced betrayal or heartache. Then, one day, I received a message from Lucy. My heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. She wanted to meet up and discuss some unresolved feelings. I debated whether I should go. Part of me wanted to close the door completely on the past, but another part of me felt a sense of closure was necessary. We met at the same coffee shop where we had that last conversation. Lucy looked different, more composed, perhaps a bit more mature. "Jake," she began, taking a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of self-reflection since we split. I realize now how selfish I was, and I want to apologize for everything." I listened, keeping my emotions in check. "Thank you, but I've already moved on, Lucy. I appreciate your apology, but it doesn't change what happened." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I just wanted you to know that I'm working on becoming a better person. I've learned that I need to take responsibility for my actions." "I think that's great," I replied honestly, "but I can't be part of your journey anymore. I need to focus on my own life and happiness." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand. I just hope you find what you're looking for." And with that, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had faced my past head-on, and I was finally able to close that chapter with grace. I stood up to leave, but not without a final glance back at her. "Take care, Lucy," I said softly and walked out into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. With the past resolved, I fully embraced the present. My relationship with Sarah continued to flourish. We went on adventures together, traveled to new places, and even planned a few trips to swim in some beautiful outdoor locations. I cherished the laughter, the joy, and the comfort of knowing I could be myself without fear of betrayal. As I stood by the pool one evening, reflecting on how far I had come, I understood that my journey wasn't just about moving on from a broken marriage. It was about rediscovering who I was, finding my passions, and learning to love again. I realized that love doesn't just mean finding someone else. It's about loving yourself first and foremost. I learned to trust again, not only in others but also in myself. I was stronger, more resilient, and determined to continue building a life filled with joy and fulfillment. As I took a deep breath, the cool evening air mixing with the warmth of the setting sun, I smiled, ready to face whatever life threw my way. My heart was open, and I was finally swimming toward a future that felt bright and full of possibilities.